All right, Brad, we're back on the death lineup. We last recorded after the Game 6 championship winning finals game that the Warriors beat the Celtics, and we're back on kind of like the grind. And we've never done a grind podcast because we started during the playoffs doing these live streams. So I don't know. I was like, man, doing research, watching the draft for the first time in years and years and years, all for the pod. We were watching the first round of the draft, and I guess we should talk about the Warriors pick first, and then we'll kind of go backwards and we'll talk a little bit about because I know you followed this draft pretty closely. I know you guys had your picks on you guys posted your picks on Instagram earlier today. But overall, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Warriors draft him at number 28. He's from Milwaukee. He was a former, I guess he was the top high school kid. And then he didn't have the greatest senior year. And that kind of messed with his college. And also the pandemic happened. And I know he had an ankle injury. So things were looking good for Patrick Baldwin Jr. People were thinking like he's going to be a high draft pick when he's ready. Things didn't happen correctly, and because of that, he falls, and the Warriors get him at 28. Where did you have him? I know you guys only did your draft on the lottery stuff, but I'm sure you saw his name in some of this stuff. What did you think about this pick?
Yeah, we knew who he was. Not much about him. I think Obi in our podcast had him as one of the biggest fallers or sleepers. I don't know which one it was, but yeah, this kid, he was a consensus top 10 prospect recruit in the country and the number one recruit in the 2021 class. I don't know what year in high school he was when he was that number one recruit.
I want to say it was his junior year, I think.
Yeah, probably. And then, like you said, the senior year kind of fell off. But
yeah,
I'm just very much hoping that he's more of a, and this is going to sound weird right before I give context, but more of a Michael Porter Jr. than a Nico Mannion. Both Michael Porter Jr. and Nico Mannion were top recruits, top prospects of their respective draft classes. Obviously, Michael Porter Jr. not ankle, but injury, doesn't get to play much his freshman year. I don't even think they make the tournament, or they do, and he barely plays. And then he kind of falls to the Nuggets in that loaded draft class, the DeAndre Ayton one. Nico Mannion, on the other hand, I think he was a 6 to a 7 top prospect of his class. He goes to the U of A. He comes out his freshman year. Warriors take him in the second round. We all know the story. He's in Italy now trying to make his way back to the NBA. It doesn't look too good for him. So Patrick Baldwin, I'm just hoping, is like more on the Michael Porter Jr. side than he is the Nico Mannion side, a former top high school prospect, top one high school prospect that, chooses to go and play under his father at a school that misses the tournament. He gets the injury. His father then gets fired after the bad season. So I maybe he does go back and play his second year to try to up his draft stock, but his dad gets canned. So why would he go back and play for that team?
Yeah, the whole thing is interesting. So just on his, on his size and such, he's 6'9" or 6'10", depending on what numbers you're looking at. He did not shoot well. I think he only shot 26% from 3 in college, and just ultimately had not what they expected out of him. But it's also a weird school for him to go to. I do think that if he doesn't have the bad senior year that he does, it's quite possible that he would have went to a bigger school. With the ankle injury, I guess he did get COVID. That was kind of bad for him, and probably hurt him a little bit. But a lot of players fall for these reasons, right? I mean, we can even look at Draymond now. Draymond, I don't know what his draft stock was at the beginning of the year, but he's a multi-year player. Probably measures a little bit shorter than people thought, and maybe not in the greatest shape in his senior season, but the Warriors pluck him in the early second round, and he's been fantastic for them. So that a lot of times with these guys, with these players like this, there's some chance. But if I was asking Bob Myers, when you're drafting this low, like, is there one thing that you look for? Is it how they compete? Is it, their sort of their will and their intestinal fortitude? Whatever it is, they draft Patrick Baldwin. I'm assuming some of it is just the pedigree of how good he was in high school, and they figure in this system, being able to not play, right? They're not going to really need him to play. He's now the youngest player on the team. Kuminga, he's younger than Kuminga by a few months, so he's going to be able to, they will Kuminga him essentially, put him in certain spots probably, and he's got the size, he's got the length. He doesn't look like he's that strong. He looks a little skinny on that end, but ultimately, like, it's the kind of guy that you are able to pick at pick 28, and you just hope that for the Warriors' sake, they're able to get him to where he was before, probably the worst year of his young athletic career happened. But he even said, just the opportunity to play with his pops was such a big deal, and he said he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't change it again if he had to do it again, because, like, he really got a lot out of playing for his dad, and then, like you said, dad got fired, so made sense for him to leave. He gets the first round, so he gets the guaranteed 2 years. I think the Warriors have a third year and fourth year option. He, they as a rookie, he doesn't, he's, I think, less than 3 million, so good for the Warriors, especially if he makes the roster. And yeah, ultimately, I think this is going to be somebody who, we have, as Warriors fans, we have a lot of these young guys, and we can focus on them a little bit during things like, this summer showcase that we're going to go to next weekend. I hope that he plays. I'm sure he's going to play, and he doesn't have to be a part of the main rotation on the roster until he's ready, until he gets his reps in. So ultimately, low pressure for him, and you hope that helps him succeed, sort of like it did with Moody and Kuminga, and we'll see what happens with them next year. But yeah, you kind of like these super high pedigree guys, and you think the Warriors can, with their coaching staff, that they can fix them and get them to where they probably should have been.
I feel like the key term that we've always heard is like Warriors culture. And when we got in Wiggins, it was like, can we make him adapt to the Warriors culture? When we drafted high pedigree Nico Mannion, kind of the same thing. Maybe it didn't work out too well for Nico, but Wiggins is looking awesome.
Well, yeah, unfortunately for Nico, he didn't really get to play with Steph, right? Like, it was,
you couldn't. Could he have? That just doesn't make sense on paper.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you put Nico Mannion on this year's team,
I don't think
could he have actually played a little point guard when Steph then got rest? We don't know, because they threw him to the Wolves when the Warriors were awful, and he had to go against these unfavorable matchups, and they exploited him. Now, I'm sure Marcus Smart looks at him and licks his lips and goes, buzzard meat here. But I'm just saying that he was in a position where he didn't have all of these great opportunities that a younger player would have had on a good team.
And they've acknowledged, coaching staff, front office, that they handled that whole 2020 draft class with Wiseman and Mannion. They didn't do the development right. But, what was I going to say with Baldwin? It's an interesting position that he's in. It's because you'd think with the Warriors, with a team that's picking in the late 20s, it's get a guy like Jordan Bell. It's get a guy like Jacob Evans. It's get a guy like Pat McCaw, who could ideally contribute now, right? You need to be ready to come off of the bench and play a role. Damian Jones, Kevon Looney, to a sense. But Patrick Baldwin, I feel like he's in an interesting position where they have tested the G League stuff with Poole, with Kuminga, and with Moody, where, when the Blazers took a kid named Shaedon Sharpe today, Shaedon Sharpe has not played a second of college basketball. He was a very good high school player, but it's hard to gauge talent when you're playing against, he essentially played against, look like kids from my high school. It's just not a good way to gauge someone's talent, in my opinion, when he doesn't touch the court in college.
Mm-hmm.
But the Portland Trailblazers made a move to get Jeremy Grant, which seemed like a move that was to win now. It looked like, let's give Dame some help and win now. And drafting Shaedon Sharpe feels like the opposite of that. This is a guy who needs developmental minutes to prepare and get better, right? I feel like the Warriors don't really have the developmental minutes, but they have this thing called the G League in Santa Cruz, which they have tested and which has worked, that I feel like is still favorable on that side. Because, if you're like I don't know, like past Warriors teams, I feel like they needed the Jordan Bell in the late rounds. They needed someone because their payroll was so high that they needed some of these win now, not win now, but just older guys who were ready to contribute in the late 20s. They don't really need that right now. They have two kids who are 19, maybe turning 20 soon, and they're ready to help contribute in the places of like the JTAs and the Damian Lees. So I don't.
Who are both free agents, by the way, and they're probably going to be open roster spots there.
I feel like they'll re-sign Damian Lee, I guess,
you
just because of the connection. I don't think they should. I don't think they should, but
the Steph signing.
That feels like a Steph signing. Yeah. Damian Lee's been on the squad forever. He was on the squad when KD was there. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So I feel like anybody who they were drafting here should have gone through the test. And maybe they didn't have enough time to do this test, but the test should have been, can you withstand Andre Iguodala being frustrated with your defensive rotation? And are you going to get sad? Are you going to get fired up? Are you going to be fine with the feedback? Like, how do you deal with that scenario? Because with these young guys, that's why I so much hope they bring back Andre, is because with these young guys, they're going to make so many mistakes and the coaches can only tell them so much. But you got the guy with 4 rings going like, okay, stop. Like, this is, you need to start paying attention, buddy.
It's not just the guy with 4 rings, though. It's the guy who was a focal point, who was a big contributor in 3 of those. On 4 of those, on the last one, he was more of a help on the sidelines, pumping up Wiggs, pumping up all those other guys. But yeah, I think it's different when it's Andre Iguodala, and no shots to Udonis Haslem, but I feel like a lot of kids barely even remember who he was. With Iguodala, you know who Iguodala was, and you probably know him from the Sixers. Maybe you forget the Nuggets run a little bit, but he was a focal point, Finals MVP. I feel like that's why some of that stuff works, and I think he's even more important to bring back now. Although I think Kuminga could definitely use Andre. I'd bet on Kuminga to be more fine than this Patrick Baldwin kid. I feel like he kind of needs the Andre.
All right, so I was looking at KOC's his scouting report on Patrick Baldwin. So KOC loved the pick. He thought it was an A+ pick. He said the pluses to Baldwin's game are essentially because of how tall he is and how long his arms are. His release point is pretty much unblockable. So it's very, I guess we call that today KD like, right? Nobody can block KD shots. He thinks that, unfortunately, the results were not there in college. A negative would be that he's a ball stopper and he takes too many shots, kind of goes for his own. That could be simply the college situation with his dad, and maybe he's not playing with guys who he's as good as, or who are as good as him. First step situation that he said that is an issue. Another positive is just that, because of what he's going to be asked to do, which is, 3-and-D, be long, get out on shooters, that it's not going to be this, he's not going to have a lot of responsibility, so he can really focus on some of this stuff. Your friend, the person who you invited to your podcast, Rafael Barlow, he tweeted, "This Warriors pick has me speechless. I need to go back and watch film from Patrick Baldwin's junior year in high school again. I wasn't impressed at the U19s, and his play from this season didn't scream first-round pick, but it's hard to doubt the Warriors." Now, it wasn't only that. It was also people who were in his mentions, and he was arguing with them. When's the last time he shot well? Someone said, "I knew he would go higher than you expected. Warriors will develop him into a good role player." And Barlow said, "I'm saving this tweet." So he was I wouldn't even say he was negative. I guess he was just surprised. But sort of what you're saying is he's buying into the culture a little bit if they do turn him. Now, on the flip side, Dan Wetzel, great pick by Golden State. Patrick Baldwin Jr. has incredible talent, but struggled playing for his father at UWM last season. Warriors don't need him right away, but may get a big hit here. And that's interesting because he comes in at 28 versus last year, when you heard the same thing about Kuminga, you heard the same thing about Moody, but they were lottery picks. This guy is barely at the end of the first round. So I thought that was a very interesting tweet. And then there was another one that that I had read from, I guess, the guy who there was a couple of local guys who wrote up stories about him, and it did sound like they thought the ankle injury that he suffered in his senior year in high school kind of mucked up his freshman year in college. So that, the Warriors know how to take care of ankle injuries now. So we can, we if he is healthy, if he's 100% healthy, which I would assume that, he probably is, or at least close to it. Maybe that won't be an issue, and it could have been in college, but we'll see. And again, we're going to this summer showcase. Do we even call it summer league? It's technically not summer league because it's in
Classic.
Vegas. Yeah, California Classic. And I can't wait to see him play. I'm very intrigued because he's so tall. And I said he was skinny because he looks really skinny, but he's still listed as 231 pounds. So that's not, that's not just it's not Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren's 195 pounds or whatever. So he's got some meat to him.
Okay, can I read something? Is this allowed to read something from Sam Vecini's?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
We're crediting the guy. It's Sam Vecini.
Crediting Sam Vecini. This is so Barlow was kind of like surprised. The guy you just read off was pretty on the positive end. Yeah. Here's Vecini's weakness section.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna read the first paragraph, or maybe the first two paragraphs. The worst athlete in the 2022 NBA draft class. It shows up on tape, and it showed in his athletic testing at the combine. Have never seen a non-center post worse explosive scores at the combine. Had just a 26.5-inch max vertical leap and posted the second worst lane agility time. There is a genuine chance he's such a liability athletically that he might not be able to stick on the floor in an NBA game due to the speed of the game. You see that lack of athleticism mostly on defense, gets toasted in space. I don't know who he guards right now. Has no lateral speed to guard the ball. If he's in a mismatch against a guard in the NBA, that guard is going to get to the paint. Had very little chance to guard in space against even mid-major guards who consistently got by him in a straight line. Seems like he also has a bit of a flexibility issue as he struggles to bend a bit and really get down in a stance for more than one slide after his first slide. Often stands up on his second or third slide and gives up his leverage. So what I will say about Vecini there is that obviously he does way, way, way more research than I do on this kid. I was just trying to zone in on maybe the top 20 picks in this draft, and they call him PB&J or PBJ, Patrick Baldwin Jr. PBJ was not really on my radar because of how low he was falling, but after doing a quick 30-minute just looking at all the tape I could find, high school he looks a lot more explosive and athletic.
So it could be the ankle.
It feels like it's the injury
frustrated him. Yeah.
Because he looks like a slower, like Bielitsa right now, and I'm just hoping less playmaking Bielitsa, better shooting. Ideal, like I'm hoping it's the ankle because hopefully he's okay, but yeah, Vecini kind of let him hear it, and he does look a little slow and not athletic in college from his tape, but hey, if he can shoot and if he could defend, maybe just a little above average or at average, the Warriors will play him. Maybe not this year just because of what they did with Moody. I thought Moody was ready, but I think he'll get run.
Yeah, that's interesting by Vecini because it's so crazy how the difference in who's doing the analysis. Like I said, KOC's pretty nice guy though. He doesn't seem to really kill these guys, so he looks for a lot more positive. But yeah, he had him at an A+, which I thought was very interesting because I'm not sure how many other folks were at an A+ that late. So I see some A-minuses, but as far in the first round, KOC gave an A+ to David Roddy with Memphis, and then he gave an A+ to, I think, just Paolo. I think that was the only other A+ he gave. Oh, no. So the Dieng pick, which was who was that? The Knicks, and then traded to the Thunder.
Traded to the No, was it? Shoot.
And then she gave Shaden Sharp an A+ as well, and then Paolo.
Interesting. But to be fair to Vecini, that was his weaknesses section. I don't need to read off his strengths really because it's kind of like just I feel like it's just like height and shooting. But
Mm-hmm.
he the thing is with that weakness section, I was pretty surprised because I read some weakness sections of other players, and that one seemed pretty tough. The worst athlete in the 2022 NBA draft class. That's tough.
All right, so the Warriors bought a second-round pick from the Atlanta Hawks. Do they not have their own second rounder?
I thought they had 3 picks this year, so and 2
So
in the second round.
So they may
but I don't know
have
if it was their own, but
they may still have some picks left. But they took Ryan Rollins, who is a guard from Toledo, and I looked up the one of the blogs, the mid-major basketball coverage blog, and I was like, oh, he's probably he's a 6'4" guard. I'm like, oh, they found someone who's going to sit in a corner and shoot threes, and it doesn't look like that's who he is. He's 6'3" and a quarter. 180 wingspan is 6'9" and 3/4 inches. And his strengths, according to this blog, the midmajormadness.com blog, scoring ability and rebounding for a guard. Areas he needs to improve: 3-point shooting and defensive effort. And so the defensive effort one kind of made me scratch my head a little bit because, they have a bunch of junkyard dogs on this basketball team when it comes to defense and how hard these guys play defense. So to draft somebody who maybe doesn't give that effort on the defensive end was kind of surprising because it doesn't seem like he necessarily fits the pedigree, but they saw something in him because they traded, they bought essentially, Jordan Belled him, and they bought they bought the pick, the 44th pick in the draft in the second round. And Ryan Rollins is on this team now. We might see Ryan Rollins this weekend or next weekend as well at the Summer Classic.
Yeah, with Rollins, I don't know jack crud about him, but maybe he holds up the cash money sign or whatever Bell did against the Warriors when they go play the Hawks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, okay, it's just recent. I don't really have much to say about Rollins, or is that his name? Rollins?
Ryan Rollins.
Brian Rollins, but the Warriors are working to trade out of number 55. Looks like they're trying to send it to Milwaukee. Or they're working out to trade. Okay, but they just drafted some guy named Gui Santos. Gui Santos.
Guy Santos
Guy
at 55. Santos. So, maybe they do make a trade, or, maybe this is I wonder if Guy Santos was in anybody's big board here. I'll look it up as we're talking, but ultimately he's not in KOC's top 50. I didn't look at Vecini's, but you can check that out if he's on there. So ultimately, we knew going into this draft they weren't going to trade up. They didn't want a giant contract. They can't really afford a giant contract. They weren't going to make any trades. They're going to run it back as much as they can. And the players that they were drafting are either going to be stash guys who, they just go and stash them and figure out, maybe in a couple years. I don't know if they're going to Justinian Jessup any of the guys.
How's that working?
Yeah. And like you said, the G League, right? The G League is going to be where probably where they play a lot. And we saw Moody and Kuminga play in the G League earlier this year. So
that's why I think it's a statement. It's because it's like, look at this top 7 pick. Look at this number 14 pick going to the G League. Look at Jordan Poole going to the G League. Look, James Wiseman, you can go to the G League. Look, number 28 pick, you're definitely going to the G League. But not to cut you off or anything, but do you know what GP2's wingspan is? Because I just read something about Rollins.
I know it's long. I don't know exactly what it is, but he's got long arms for sure.
So Rollins 6'3", 6'10" wingspan.
Yeah,
crazy. That seems very big. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy for someone his. I remember Steph, when Steph came in the NBA, he was like, I think Steph is probably closer to 6'2" than he is 6'3", but he also had long arms. His wingspan was like 6'7" or something. But the Warriors like those guys with with the wingspans for
So I mean,
defensive reasons.
the thing is, if there was a team I would bet on to change someone's defensive effort, I feel like the Warriors are probably in the top 3. Maybe it's Warriors, like Miami, Memphis. I don't know the order, but I feel like the Warriors could change someone's defensive effort by the guys that are around them, and the culture, like we've been saying. But I mean, 6'3" with a 6'10" wingspan, like, I mean, just try a little more, and we might have a lot of fast breaks on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe they're looking at it and going like, oh, he's got some of the things that we see, and the other thing is when you have GP2, if they bring him back, and we'll save this. I think we'll probably have a bigger discussion about the roster in the next show, but GP, just how hard that guy works and how hard I imagine Jordan Poole's going to work to continue to get better. This Rollins kid's going to come in and they're just going to kick his butt in practice and in all these scrimmages. So he'll have to figure that out pretty quickly. But hey, he's got something that they like, or else they would not have bought that pick to draft him. So,
and on Vicini's board, he is ranked number 33. I'm pretty sure Baldwin's a lot lower. Right below him is Nikola Jovic, who the Heat drafted right before the Warriors drafted.
Warriors Twitter wanted that guy big time.
I know, and I wanted Jaden Hardy.
And I think they mosely wanted Jovic just for the Jokic memes. I think that's literally why Warriors Twitter wanted him, was just for the memes.
I think so too.
All right,
I wanted them to get Jamari Bouye.
Wait, has he got drafted yet?
I think I told you about him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been drafted yet. But yeah, he was brought up from the freshman team to the JV team, literally the game we were supposed to play him in high school. And I was pretty scared to play the kid, but he got pulled up right before we played him, and I was like, oh, sigh of relief. I didn't have the dog in me.
How come?
I don't know, man. This kid was nuts. This kid was so good. And I feel like from what I saw in high school, he was just like, he'd drive to the paint. He had the quickest first step ever, get by whoever was in front of him, jump as high as he possibly could from the free throw line, and just be floating in the air. People would, the Monte Vista team would crunch in and try to stop his drive, and he'd just be in the air, easy pass to the corner. Like, the kid was nuts. And in college, he just looked like this ultimate shot creator, take the game over, put the ball in his hands, and something good will happen type of guy. Yeah, so I hope the Warriors get him. But I don't know how many picks they have
left. So on, let's see if KOC, where does KOC have him on his board? How do you spell his first name?
Jamaree.
KOC doesn't have him in the top 50 either.
My guy.
No. I'm looking at the wrong one. That was the draft grades.
Let's KOC probably doesn't. Vicini has him at 77.
Oh, okay. Yeah. 77 is pretty low though. That's off. Yeah. That's out of that's like the third round, which doesn't exist.
Well, the guy we just took was on Vicini's 75.
Oh,
Santos.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about this. We'll quickly just talk about the first round, and everybody, since pretty much, I feel like since this, the college season ended, I've heard about Jabari Smith as the number 1 pick. I've heard about Chet Holmgren as a possible number 1 pick. And I've heard about Paolo as a possible number 1 pick. As this stuff was shaken out, it was pretty clear that Jabari was going to be the top pick.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, about 10 minutes before this draft starts, we start hearing that Paolo's going to be the top pick. What the heck changed? Because I really wonder if was the Jabari stuff a smokescreen, and they were trying to get someone to trade up into that number 1 slot, and they really wanted Paolo all along. I'm assuming that's what it was, but everybody's, all the tweets was Jabari's going to go number 1 and Chet's going number 2, Paolo's going number 3, and then they switched it on us right at the last minute.
I mean, shout out to my guy Rafael Barlow, who's been on the Paolo train since before our podcast, way before any of this draft stuff, probably since last year. He's thought that if you pass on Paolo Banchero at the number 1 pick, like, the reasons people are not, putting Paolo number 1, maybe it's defensive effort and stuff like that, is the same reason that people did not draft Jason Tatum number 1. So he's been saying that forever, and I'm glad that maybe some people started recognizing that. And I think you're right, because I was wondering, like, what do they have to gain by just smoke screening Jabari? They have the first pick, but I guess you're right that someone could have traded up with them, and then they could have went down and gotten their guy still. I don't know, but yeah, I was convinced Jabari. The BAM Pod has done this mock draft for 3 years now, and the one prideful thing we had in that mock draft was we'd at least get the top 3 correctly every year. And this top 3, we got it wrong. We had Jabari 1. That's just what it seemed like the whole time. And then last night, the Vegas odds completely switched and had Paolo as like a minus favorite, who has been a plus favorite this whole time. And I was like, what is going on here? And I think they switched back, but then Paolo still gets drafted first. And I was just like, well, there goes our mock. That literally, that one thing and Sacramento's pick derailed our whole mock draft. I think we got one right out of the top 10. And it's literally because Orlando decided to stay quiet and Sacramento decided to make a dumb play. But
hey, I give them credit for going after the guy that they really thought. I think there's some pressure there to take who everyone thinks, then you get Anthony Bennett as your first round. Though I don't think a lot of people had Anthony Bennett. Maybe he was the guy that Cleveland wanted to take those years ago.
Paolo has the higher ceiling, in my opinion. I think it's the right pick. Jabari, to me, like, I think he has the lowest floor. In my opinion, I've said this on the BAM Pod. I got some slack for it, but I asked Raphael on DMs. I was like, dude, am I an idiot for thinking this? He's like, no, you're right. So I think that you could have put Jabari Smith Jr., you could have plopped him right out, right from his seat right now, without any NBA experience, and he would have been help to a playoff team. And
okay, well, here's a different question. You watch the Warriors. Who fits what the Warriors were doing better, Jabari or Paolo?
Jabari.
Yeah, that's what I think too, because you watch how willing he was to just go out there and defend all the way past the perimeter, almost as if he was like, I'm trying to think of who like one of the great perimeter defenders was in basketball history, but it was almost like, I'm going out further than you're comfortable with because I'm going to make you uncomfortable. And I was like, man, this guy, Draymond would probably jump for joy with the opportunity to work with this guy. But there's another part of this game, and the big body, you're talking, they're both about the same height, but you're talking Paolo's like much more filled out at 250, and Jabari's a lot skinnier at 210. Paolo played the better competition, playing for Duke. So it was very interesting. I was tangentially following a lot of this, just listening to podcasts and stuff. And what it sounded like to me heading into this draft was a lot of people really, really liked Paolo, but they thought that Jabari Smith Jr.'s value was a little bit higher in a draft. And I was like, well, why don't we just take the best guy? Why don't we take the guy that you like the best and like not worry about what everyone else thinks? And sounds like that's exactly what they did. So I thought that was really cool.
And I think it also could be because, every draft guru I've listened to doesn't have a tier 1 prospect in this draft. Last year, the tier 1 was Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley. 3 guys who you could hand the keys to your franchise and say, like, we think something good can happen out of this. Yeah. This year, I can't give the keys to no one. So I'm wondering, like, that might be why. Maybe because no one thought that this draft had a number 1 guy. So how about we just take the guy with the highest floor, who's the youngest player in the draft, by the way. Jabari, I don't know about the draft, but Jabari is younger than Chet by like almost a year. Yeah. Younger than Paolo by
5 months.
8 months, 5 months. Yeah. So Jabari was the youngest, and I think he had the highest floor. I think at his worst, he will be a high-end rotation player, like 3-and-D. And that's so valuable in this league, especially on a playoff team as a role player coming off the bench. But I'm wondering, like, I kind of want to ask you this. Where do you think like Kuminga and Wiseman, specifically those two? I think Warriors World tweeted it, or Sam or Andy, one of those 3. I think they tweeted it and asked the question, where would Kuminga and Wiseman fall in this draft? Because I have my idea, but I feel like you have to say, where would Kuminga and Wiseman fall in this draft with what we knew before they got drafted, before they played an NBA game?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think Kuminga would probably fit right in like the 3-4 range. And I think Wiseman is probably right after him. But then, you have all these guards who go in the these wings, essentially from 4 to I guess, all the way to what, 9 or no, even further. Who's this first center to come off the board? Was it Duran?
Duran.
Yeah, so 13 is the first center. I think Wiseman it would probably be a little bit higher of a prospect than him, but I don't know. Would teams take all of those wings ahead of Wiseman? I feel like Wiseman is probably less than the number 2 pick in this draft. Well, some
I'm a
of it
little
is because
higher.
some of it
I'm a
is
little
because of
higher.
what we know about him, though, right? Like the problem with Wiseman, and this was always the issue, and this is very similar to some of the guys in this draft, like Sharp, is he played so little in college. And so you didn't know what he would do against top talent because he didn't play any top talent. He's a man child. Obviously, he's got a tremendous length and size. And I would imagine he's just getting stronger. His body is probably filling out now that it's going to be his 3rd year in the league. So I don't know. Based on what we know, what he can, what he is, I'm thinking,
That's
maybe
why I
a
don't think
little
you
bit
could
less.
factor it in. I'm saying you have to factor in like what we know, what we knew before he played a game in the NBA. Like what was the feeling around in that draft? And I think he would have been. I mean, maybe I'm just a homer and a lot higher on Kuminga and Wiseman because I love the Warriors. But I wouldn't be surprised if you told me like Wiseman went 1 or something
Good. I
like
mean,
that.
this is
Or
a good question for Barlow, right? Like he probably would have a pretty good
yeah,
answer to that question.
Kuminga 4 or 3 sounds right to me. I just think that Wiseman. The thing is with Wiseman though, is him playing wasn't like his choosing, correct? Like he got in, there was like some trouble with I don't know.
Yeah, it's because college basketball's ridiculously fraudulent.
Yeah, but Shaden Sharp like that he chose not to play at Kentucky or something like that,
And
or he
it was mostly for his health of his draft stock, right? Like
yeah.
that was kind of the reason. All right, so the we got a question, or we got a little comment here that I'll put up. Prediction for 51 and 56 slots. So
No, they already happened.
it already happened. So the draft is over,
And
and
draft guys
now,
are starting to sign right now.
yeah, now you're getting all the guys who didn't get drafted signing. The Warriors signed Lester Quinones to a 2-way deal.
The Lakers are so active right now.
The guy who you were talking about, Jamari Bouye, agreed to a deal with the Miami Heat. Sharif O'Neal signed with the Lakers. Good for Sharif. I don't
The
imagine
Lakers also got Scottie Pippen Jr.
Oh my God. I don't imagine Sharif is going to fill out and be a player, but knowing what we know about his sort of situation, like I'm just happy to see him, sign
Totally.
a contract. So the Warriors, so we talked about Guy Santos at 55, and did they have 51? I don't see Shams tweeting about pick 51. What happened at pick 51? Do we know?
Well, the draft. What was Santos 55?
55.
I
I'm
wonder
gonna
if they
look at
traded one of these picks then.
I'm gonna look at ESPN.com and see if they have the full list of the picks here. Let's see.
Yeah, 51 is just complete. Oh no, 51 was the Hawks.
Okay, so
the
Warriors not have that pick?
Yeah, I don't think the Warriors had that pick then. I'm not sure. Jaden Hardy, I wish. That would have been sick if I got all 3 of those right. I thought Baldwin was going to fall. That's why I thought Jaden Hardy would be the 28 pick. I thought Baldwin was just going to tank, continue to fall in the draft. Who knows? Who knows if he would have had the Warriors not taken him?
Yeah, we'll if I can find it. Like you would think there's just a website, ESPN.com, where I could literally go to the website and go, just give me all of the picks. Why do I have to click 5 links to get there? And then I click there and it's like, oh, great. For only the first round. And I got to click another link to get to the second round. So 51 was the Warriors drafted Tyrese Martin, small forward from UConn. So the Warriors have 4 guys that they are gonna figure out what's going on here as
They're
far
all
as
going to hang
bringing
out
them
in
to the
Santa Cruz
roster.
together.
Yeah, I mean it's
Well,
kind of
because
cool.
those second round picks can be two ways, right? That's like the benefit of
so.
those second
Yeah,
rounders
I
is they
think
could be
so.
two-way contracts.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
So
probably what they're
very
doing with
interesting.
those.
I didn't have it wasn't on my on my board here. The Warriors were going to come away with 4 players at the end of this draft. It's crazy.
I wanted Dalen Terry. That's all. If he ends up being
Well, he
something
went
for the
too
Bulls,
high.
like I'm just gonna look at that. The Warriors could have traded up or something.
He just went too high for you. All right, I know you were upset, or not really upset, but you thought the Kings made a mistake drafting Keegan Murray at 4. I think KOC agreed with you. They only got a B-. Jaden Ivey goes 5 to the Pistons. We saw a lot of Jaden Ivey. We saw a lot of Jaden Ivey's mom. We saw a lot of Jaden Ivey crying. And so that was a really fun, like, I think he comes out of this draft as kind of like a little bit of a star just because he got so much attention. Chet Holmgren and the dice around his neck. I'm not sure I understood.
That was kind of cool. I feel like that got some hate.
I'm not sure I understood exactly why he wore the dice. I guess it's his number, and then it was all about, is he going to get the number? And he didn't know if they had the number, and then if they did, then he was going to have to buy it. And then he was like, "No, I can't say anything because I don't want to be bargaining now without knowing what's going." Like, okay, dude, like you should have been a little bit more prepared.
He's gonna roll the dice on himself, bet on himself,
I guess. Your U of A boy, Matherin, went to the Pacers. KOC really liked that pick. You were talking about the age of these guys. Shaedon Sharpe is barely 19. Dyson Daniels is barely 19.
What did KOC give that pick for the Pelicans? I liked that pick a lot.
A. He gave it an A. Sochan or Sohan.
I think it's
Sohan. He's barely 19, and there are some 18-year-olds in this draft. Jalen Williams, who's the Santa Clara guy, he's 21. He's like the oldest guy in the first round. But Jalen Duren, 18 and a half. Actually, the Kansas guy is the oldest guy in the draft because he was the senior drafted. AJ Griffin is not quite 19, is a few months away from being 19. And who else is 18? I thought I saw another guy who was 18 in this list. Maybe not. Maybe those were the only 2. So yeah, Patrick Baldwin, 19 and a half, but he's still the youngest guy in the Warriors. Anything else surprise you in the first round? Did you think of any? What did you think of all these trades that were going on?
Were there, like, the Thunder was just kind of making moves? I think the Pistons one is what confused me.
Yeah.
Because they cleared cap space, what seemed to be like for a push for Ayton. And I'm not sure if maybe they could still afford it, but they just went and got Duren. Like, it seems to me like they actually came away as winners. But
well, it sounds like they're going to buy Kemba out, right? I think that's what
that would make sense. They just don't have room for him. It feels like they have Cade and they have Killian, and I like both of them more than I like
yes.
Kemba.
I mean, I think it's just a deal to then buy Kemba out, and then you kind of erase him from the books.
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I think just to piggyback or circle back on that Kings pick, it was like, I don't hate the pick. It's just it makes sense, right? Because we've talked about it in our chat that getting Sabonis like speeds up their window in a window that I don't think you needed to speed up. I think that ship still needed some time to sail. Like, I feel like they're putting a lot of eggs into the De'Aaron Fox basket, and De'Aaron Fox to me hasn't proven jack crap.
Yeah.
So, you have this dynamic duo of De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, and I think Jaden Ivey is clearly the better prospect. I think Jaden Ivey will look down the line in 5 years, and it's clearly like the Kings messed up here, like they have in the past by Bagley over Luka. But I guess we maybe thought Bagley was a lot better at the time. But this one is it felt so clear. It felt so obvious. It feels like Keegan Murray will fit their squad better. He should be starting by day one at the power forward position as a 3-and-D player. He fits the roster well. But if you're drafting at number 4 and this feels like a top 4 heavy draft, you got to go with the guy who's supposed to be the 4th pick. It's Jaden Ivey. He was the best. I'm glad they didn't, because now my new favorite team in the Eastern Conference, Detroit Pistons, get him. But yeah, I just feel like the Kings, since last year, I feel like they've missed so many times on the draft. And they saw last year and they said, who could we get that like won't be a bust. Like there's no chance he'll be bad. And they say, okay, 22-year-old Davion Mitchell, right? He can't be bad, right? He's so old and he's gonna get drafted pretty high. He like can't be bad. He just doesn't have the highest ceiling, but he can't be bad in this first year. And they're right, he wasn't bad. He's 22 years old. And this year they do a similar thing. They go 21-year-old Keegan Murray. And to their credit, though, this kind of it feels like it fits their window a little more. You know, I don't know if they need like the 18-year-old project. Maybe they do need these 22-year-olds who kind of are closer to the age of Fox and are ready to go and play some winning basketball. But I mean, sure, draft Keegan Murray. It makes you better this year. Drafting Jaden Ivey wouldn't have made you better this year. Drafting Keegan Murray does, but drafting in 5 years, it's going to be quite obvious to me. But you know, this team is still going to be fighting for a play-in spot. So what the hell did you have to lose?
Yeah. I mean, you're drafting somebody who's a little bit older, who fits your starting lineup this year a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, or you just go, trade for TJ Warren or somebody like that. It was funny, this whole draft. So I liked Malika. I thought she was good. She wasn't perfect. Like she had a couple of, you could tell she was a little nervous, but I thought she was very charming. Perk, man.
I don't think he said a whole one word during that whole Warriors thing.
Perk, he was doing these comparisons. He compared my guy Jabari Smith Jr. to Sharif Abdur-Rahim, who was like in the 2003 draft. And Sharif, what was, he did shoot from the outside and stuff, but he wasn't this guy who, was like a deer around the court. Like Sharif was a little bit of a slower, maybe a lesser athlete, but he was just a great scorer. He could score the basketball. And when he compared Jabari Smith Jr. to Sharif and KD, I was like, we just saw the NBA Finals where Jason Tatum is sitting right there. Jason Tatum is probably a better comp than KD, especially because you're comparing this young kid to one of the greatest players of all time. But Sharif Abdur-Rahim, like you don't even know who Sharif Abdur-Rahim is.
Just by 2K.
And just it's just like, man, Perk. And somebody get my guy the cough button in the second round of this draft. This guy must have coughed on the air 5 times. Like, come on, dude, be professional.
And what did he do with Chet? Was it if like Giannis and Kristaps had a baby, or was Giannis and someone else?
No, it was Giannis and Kristaps.
Giannis and Kristaps had a baby. It is Chet Holmgren.
And he said, he said Chet was a tough guy. He's gonna dunk it on your face, man. Chet.
I'm not.
Chet.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of criticism on his frame and his like skinny frame. I feel like he could still do well. He's such a good rim protector with that.
He's the most he's the most intriguing prospect, maybe in the history of the NBA draft, because of his skill set. Like, there are some guys who had they would come from Europe, so you didn't have a lot of video on them. But we have a ton of video on this dude. And if we didn't, we just ask his dad, who's been recording his game since he was in the 6th grade. And so we have all kind of tape on him. And with all that tape, people still think he's going to be really good. I mean, what does that mean as far as filling out? When I watched the clips of him, he gets his long strides. So he eats up a lot of the court by not really having to take very many steps. But I'm not sure that there was a lack of quickness there, but that's just kind of like because he's so tall, like he's not going to be the most, the quickest guy on the court. So, but I think it's going to be fascinating. And so I was talking to our good buddy Ben Cruz, and the Ringer. I may be helping the Ringer just with some podcast editing. And so one of the producers on the Ringer, who people will hear because Bill will bring him on, was Steve Cerruti. And I was talking to Cerruti about Chet because he was pro Chet. He wanted Chet over Jabari, but he's like, I think we're going to draft Jabari. And I said, what's going to happen is everybody is going to want to dunk on Chet. Like, that's going to be the thing, is can you put Chet on a poster? And I saw, you were really young, but me, your uncle and a couple friends, we went to Oakland to see Yao Ming. This was when Yao Ming and Jay Williams were the first 2 picks in the draft. So whatever year that was, 2002 or something. And it was Team China versus Team USA. It was not the Olympic year, but you know how every 2 years you got to qualify and do all this stuff. So the 2002 team was like Paul Pierce, Baron Davis, Jay Williams, not a great team in any manner, but the China team was just only Yao. The game, all they wanted to do was dunk on Yao. They must have tried to dunk on him like 7 or 8 times during this game. And that's what I thought about with Chet is all these guys are going to try and put this poor dude on a poster because he's a tall white guy. Sean Bradley, who was drafted the same year as Chris Webber in 1993. He's a second pick of the draft, right before Penny Hardaway. He was 7'4" and frame very similar to Chet Holmgren. Only just people just wanted to dunk on him. And so they just attacked him and attacked him and attacked him. So Chet's going to get a lot of experience in being a rim protector in the NBA, unless, you know, they do stuff to kind of keep him. Defenses are different these days. You know, Sean Bradley's like staying right in the middle. Yao Ming staying right in the middle. And Chet may not only just be in the middle. He's going to be helping, and you know he's going to have to get out to the wing and help. So he's not just going to sit in the middle. But I do think that's going to be the thing. Is like these guys secretly are going to be like, okay, I'm going to get him, and I'm going to. I want this thing to go viral. I want this thing to go on Twitter. You know, I want people to tweet it, and you know, that's just how the thing works today. But so you know, that's what we were talking about with the Ringer guys.
And Jonathan Kuminga said challenge accepted. But I think you're right. And Rafael Barlow actually said something like that on our podcast where he was like, Chet's gonna sell tickets, you know, for better or for worse. Like kind of like how people would go buy tickets to see LaMelo because they either want to see him do good or fail. Like that's just kind of the spotlight he's been put in, his own doing too. He's a little cocky, but you know that he's gonna sell tickets, and OKC needs some tickets to be sold.
The other guy who I secretly thought would have been like the perfect Warrior was Mark Williams, and I was asking you about him today. I was like, the Warriors have zero chance at this guy, right? And you're like, yeah. And he goes 15 to the Hornets. I sort of thought about it as a little bit of loony insurance. They're a different player. He's, we watched Rob Williams. We watched, what is Rob Williams' nickname?
Does he have one?
The Time Lord. They call him
Time Lord. Oh man, yeah, my bad.
I mean, we watched that guy, and that guy was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, what if we had him on the Warriors?
That's what Duran's supposed to be.
Yeah, Duran, Mark Williams, those guys. So that'll be interesting because I always look at this as who could help the Warriors. That's sort of how I look at the players when they get drafted. Is like I like them if I think that they can fit on the Warriors team, and we'll see. We'll see if Patrick Baldwin Jr. Can fit on the team. As we finish this out, okay. So,
one more question before we finish this out, and it's kind of a point. Is that I know we're kind of getting close to time here, but the Memphis Grizzlies have had a very recent successful draft history. You look back, Jaren Jackson Jr. just from 4 years ago, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant, to Desmond Bane, to Zaire Williams. So they've been pretty successful as of late, and I usually trust who they pick. The guy who they picked today, their first pick, I know who the Warriors were heavily looking at, and it seemed like that's what we were all looking at too, was Jack LaRavia. So I'm interested to see if he pans out because I usually trust the Memphis Grizzlies with Zaire Williams wasn't supposed to go number 10 last year, I'll tell you that. And they traded up to grab him. So it seemed like LaRavia was supposed to fall a little more. So we will see. And then Danny Green's going to the Grizzlies, but I think he's out for most of the year. But there's Dylan Brooks and Danny Green.
Well, what about the next pick where they took like the chunky quarterback, David Roddy, who was a 6'4", 260-pound quarterback at Colorado State, and like 6'4", 260. Like he's a big dude, but I guess he can shoot a little bit. And Memphis had to send DeAnthony Melton to Philly.
It's a good pickup for Philly.
So pretty interesting move there. I kind of like, again, you know, when we look at Memphis, I go, okay, that series is very like memorable to me. How does I don't know enough about this guy, but like would the Warriors immediately put him in the pick and roll and go, okay, Steph, you're just going to go at this guy. So that's also how I look at this.
Yeah,
stuff.
I feel like they try to avoid those guys because I think they think what you're thinking.
Yeah. All right. So let's quickly talk about the parade. We were at the parade on Monday. And I was telling Brad on the Thompson to Clark podcast because we were talking about the old man injuries that the Giants have, like lower back tightness and these crazy injuries. And I was like, well, I had a very similar injury, and all I did was I was just standing on the pavement at the Warriors parade. Like my back was getting tight. I thought I was gonna have to like do a cobra yoga move on the concrete to loosen up my back. But fun. It was really fun, and I used the for our slate here. I used the Steph drinking out of the bottle here. That we got to see him. I also put the little clip on Instagram and as a reel, and people were very interested in seeing Warriors parade stuff on Instagram. So we got a lot of hits. But what did you think? First time, we've ever the Giants won 3 championships. The Warriors have now won 4. You're too young. You weren't even born the last time the Niners won, but your first time at a parade, do you need to go back if they win again? Do you want to go back, or you waiting for one of the other teams to win and then you're going to go? Like, what was the mindset here?
I think I'm done. It was cool seeing the players up close and as excited as they were. But yeah, it was long and I feel like I'm too young to have back issues, and mine was a little bugging too. So I think I mainly went because of how convenient it was to go living here in the city now. I think I would have went regardless, but yeah, I maybe once the Niners or the Giants get one, then I'll probably go back. I can't see. It was tough, man. Maybe if I live here, I guess I can't not go, but
yeah.
It was cool though, because Steve Kerr, I have that video that I have yet to export from my camera roll. He just is like right in front of me, like, I don't know, a foot away. So, I think who else passed by? Festus Ezeli, Bob Myers. I barely missed Bob Myers. I wanted to yell at him to take Dalen Terry.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell us the Chris DeMarco story here?
Okay. So was filming the entire parade. I wanted to put together this little like TikTok for my own podcast, and I had my camera either set on Steve Kerr or I was waiting for Steve Kerr to get in vision because the coach's bus came by, and Steve Kerr, I was looking for him on the bus. He wasn't on the bus. He came off the bus to, talk to fans and sign. So I was looking for him with my camera. I think I saw him, but I noticed that he wouldn't be in vision for a while. So I just put my camera down for a little bit, and there was this little blow up basketball, like toy hoop in the crowd that the fans were throwing the ball up to the players and coaches so they could shoot the shot into the crowd. And Chris DeMarco gets the ball and he makes it. And so I immediately put my camera up. I'm like, and I get the reaction to it, and they throw it back to him. And this time I have the shot, and he shoots it again and he makes it again. And so I got that on camera. I honestly, I know who Chris DeMarco is. I didn't know what he looked like. And
we both didn't know.
Yeah. And he was walking, he came out of the bus to walk along the crowd, and he was like, hey, does anyone have this video? And I was like, I have it. And he's like, cool, send it to me. And I was like, how am I possibly going to send this to you? And he gave me his phone number. And then so me and my girlfriend do a little bit of detective work. And I know I sent you guys the picture. I was like, does this look like the guy? Like, I don't even remember. And you guys said that this did look like the guy. And I did the area code that he gave me. I'm not going to say the area code, but it lined up from out of the state where he's from. That's where the area code lined up, like not in California. I was like, this has to be him. So then I texted him and I said, I sent him the video, and I said, he said, thank you. You have 2 free tickets for next season. And I was like, wow, thank you, Coach DeMarco. Like, I don't know if he thought I knew who he was now, but I didn't know who he was. And I don't know. Should I spoil the rest?
I mean, it depends. Was it good news?
Well, the rest is the, so he said, I have 2 free tickets for next season. And I said, instead of 2 free tickets, can you be a guest on my podcast? And he said, no problem. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Like the ending to the story.
No, that's great. It'd be really cool. That would be, I mean, you guys have had some fun guests. I mean, we just talked about Barlow, who's who's kind of an up and coming draft guru, and he's probably even more of a draft guru than most people realize because of the big board stuff. But yeah, that's a giant guest. It's a really fun one.
I know.
That'll be a lot of fun to talk to him.
Maybe he can give us the insider scoop on PBJ if we see him at the California Classic.
So you know what it looks like? It looks like the Rollins pick was not actually. It doesn't look like they bought the pick. It looks like they may have traded, and then there was some money consideration in that deal. So it may have been for whatever reason. I cannot find exactly what happened, but it's possible that the Warriors traded 51 to 44 or 51 plus cash to 44 and grabbed Rollins. So Bob Myers said that there might be, they're not sure about Patrick Baldwin Jr. as far as Summer League is concerned because of his ankle. He still has to be cleared. He won't. The status for Summer League won't be decided until meeting with Celebrini. And then he said that Bob Myers also said Ryan Rollins was drafted with the intention of having him on the 15-man. So that's really interesting.
Second round pick.
I get, it's a guard league, right? It's a wing league. And we just talked about his wingspan and his height. So, I don't know anything about his athleticism. We'll have to see on that. And then Gui Santos may be a draft and stash option. Gui Santos is from Brazil. So there you go. All right.
And with that news on Rollins, I just want to say, Chia, it was a hell of a time, my friend.
Hey, who know? You never know. We might be able to get Cheese on the podcast and talk about his time. JJ likes to call him Cheese. All right, real quick. Because we're going to be doing this show hopefully weekly. I mean, we may miss some weeks here and there because I am going on vacation in July sometime. But I thought it would be kind of fun to recommend something that we've watched. And I think the big one is Hustle, the Adam Sandler movie that we both saw. Our guy Wancho was the main basketball player, the main actor of this movie with Adam Sandler. There was a lot of guys like Anthony Edwards who played a bad guy really well, almost to the point of made me wonder if he's really that nice of a guy, or if he's a stone cold killer like he looked in that movie. Sort of predictable, but an awesome Netflix movie. Just a cool, let's just watch this movie. And then at the end of 2 hours, you're like, that was a lot of fun. I really liked that movie. What did you think?
Hustle was awesome. I mean, it just captivated. It's hard to look in the lens of my lens is just complete basketball, right? That's a lot of what I watch. But my girlfriend, on the other hand, doesn't really watch basketball. So I think from her lens, it was she was really entertained by the movie.
Yeah.
So I think, I was especially entertained seeing all the characters and
calling them out.
Yeah, because what Adam Sandler was doing is essentially what kind of what Rafael Barlow does. He's mainly focused in the international stuff, so he's always in different countries. And I was like, the only difference is that Adam Sandler worked for the Sixers, while Barlow's not really working for a team. He's kind of viewing all these guys, not looking for one specific team to place them. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, and Queen Latifah is in it. I was so surprised that she played the wife. I was like, yeah, what a fun mix for a couple there. Adam Sandler and Queen Latifah, who's just one of the coolest ladies, one of the best original female rappers. It's so weird because no one ever sees her rap anymore, but she was a legit rapper back in the late 80s. So to see her was kind of cool. And then yeah, just ultimately, if you have 2 hours, it is a cool underdog story. Very predictable, but predictable in a good way. Sometimes you see movies and there's these swerves and you're like, oh, I didn't want that to happen because I wanted to be happy in this movie. You're going to be happy watching this movie. So check out Hustle. I'm watching some other basketball stuff, so we have more recommendations throughout the rest of this year. But so we'll figure out a time to. We may not be regular on the same day as far as recording because Brian's got a lot of shows. I do a lot of shows, and we'll sort of have to figure out the right time to do this. But next week I'll have a question. We'll talk about the roster, but I do have a question to close this show out. If you could only bring back one guy, is it Kevon Looney or is it GP2?
Wow. It's Kevon Looney just because we don't know what Wiseman is.
I agree. The
thing is, and what Slater said is that I think he made a good point that I sometimes tend to forget, but like they got to the finals without GP2.
Yep.
He just helped them, probably was a big reason, of course, why they won it, but they got there without him.
Yes.
I don't know. Like Kevon Looney was just so impactful in some of those series.
For matchup reasons, they were able to get by Dallas without GP. They may have still beat Dallas without Looney, but I think I'm not sure they get past Memphis if they don't have Looney. That would be an interesting one to think about. All right, so that's a little teaser. Next week we'll talk a little bit more about roster stuff, and I think we'll probably have a little bit more of an idea about the Warriors, what the Warriors are going to do. Because when is free agency? Like around the 4th of July timeframe, right? That's when free agency usually happens.
Isn't there like a moratorium period? I'm just learning what that term is, but I read somewhere there's like in August. Does that even sound right at all? Like beginning of August?
Let's see. I just looked it up. 2022 free agency is expected to be June 30th, but the NBA hasn't set the exact date yet. So
there's something with opt-out and opt-in stuff coming up and like at the end of this month. I mean, I know we talk strictly Warriors, but KD and Kyrie Irving, man, what the hell is going on over there in Brooklyn?
Yeah,
but yeah,
we'll definitely have some interesting conversation around that if they do figure. I fully expect Kyrie to go back to Brooklyn and they're sort of fine, but
really,
I just don't see anybody giving away assets for the guy. Like, can you depend on that guy?
No, but I mean, the Sixers were so willing to do it for James Harden, another guy who I can't depend on.
Yeah, but James Harden didn't say no to the vaccine, right? Like, if you trade for Harden, if you trade for Kyrie, I don't know what the states are still saying, but are there?
I think it's only still those. From everything I've heard, it's just still like what Warriors,
California?
Knicks, and Nets.
And
not even full of California. Like he can still go to the Lakers and not have it.
Oh, okay.
From what I know, still, but yeah, I wouldn't want Kyrie on my team, but I understand if you're the Sacramento Kings, you would want that guy in a heartbeat.
I don't think that they would. I just don't. I think there are maybe a couple teams who would want Kyrie. And I think if you think you are close to winning the title and you need that little kick in the butt, and this dude says, I'm going to play, I'm not going to take a mental, I'm not going to take a me day in the middle of the season. I think you need him to promise to do stuff in order to take him on. Robert Ramos said, are we still celebrating KD Day? I celebrate KD Day every year because I love KD.
I love KD too.
Yeah, so we'll but all that stuff's gonna happen. Well, I'm sure if the free agency starts next Thursday, this show might be kind of crazy. So we'll figure out.
Crazy, man. We were betting on not that crazy of a free agency, but with all these trades that aren't from guys that aren't even free agents, like it just spices it up even more.
All right, we'll end it here. I really enjoyed looking at the draft, even though the Warriors didn't even, the Warriors didn't have a high pick, but then they end up with 3 guys and now 2 of those guys are supposed to be 15-man rotation or 15-man roster. That's really interesting. All right, so we'll end it here. For Bri, I am Double G. Thanks to everybody who is watching, who watched, who listened on the audio version. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.